Hi, welcome to my review of Giant from 1956, directed by George Stevens, and the third and final film to be released starring the legendary James Dean. So yes, we are back once again. We'll discuss another Western on the channel and another James Dean film to discuss as well. This is a film that I look forward to discussing today and hearing your thoughts as well. Saw it a few days ago now for the first time. So yes, there'll be a spoiler warning for this discussion. If you haven't seen this film, I would highly recommend seeing it first and then come back to this video, and we can go from there. We can discuss this film in the comments, and we can discuss different westerns, and of course James Dean as well, and this being one of the 3 films that he starred in. So yes, with all that said, let's discuss my thoughts on this film. So yes, a fascinating watch for me. As I say, a couple of days ago now, seeing this, watched it on physical media, and yeah, this is a film. It's interesting. Kind of concepts. And themes, and it starts out in the mid-20s on this cattle ranch, mainly in Texas. But we have this kind of prologue, if you will, and the meeting of Bick, aka Jordan Benedict, and he's played by Rock Hudson, and of course Elizabeth Taylor playing Leslie, and they meet, and they basically very soon into the film, get married, and then they go back to the cattle ranch run by Luz, and who's the sister of Bick, and it's essentially showing this lifestyle in Texas, on the ranch, and loads of different characters. It's this kind of epic, family saga. I didn't really know what to expect when going into this film. Obviously, I've seen Rebel Without a Cause quite a few times now, and absolutely love that film. One of my very, very favourite, films of all time. And of course, I did as well this year see East of Eden earlier this year, and that's a film I did enjoy as well. Not as good as Rebel Without a Cause, but it's a film that I did appreciate and enjoy. And James Dean in that film was once again legendary. This film, is a bit more divisive than the other two, and I wasn't really knowing what to expect. Just was very interested in seeing this. I love westerns, and I thought the plot was very interesting. It's based, of course, on the 1952 book as well. We have Dennis Hopper in this, young Dennis Hopper, which was cool to see, and Rock Hudson as well, in this film. So I was very intrigued by this, and I didn't really know what to expect. And this is overall, in a nutshell, I would say I did enjoy this film. I really did, and I found this to be, in places, quite stunning. I think George Stevens, it's very, very different to, for example, Shane, that being a fairly short film, Western film, and, that's one of my absolute favourites, Western films. It's one of the defining ones, really, for me, and this is a very, very different film to that, and, it's this quite drawn out, I would say, if being honest, family saga, starting in the mid-20s, of course, spanning over 25 years, of this time period, and just showing how this family, and different, characters as well in the background. You see them at first, for example, Jet, played by James Dean, of course, how they all change over time, kind of poverty versus wealth. You've got discrimination there as well, plays a big part in this film, and a lot of different themes in this. And essentially as well, how the rise to, wealth and power can affect some individuals and change them as well, and in a sense as well, how people, kind of trying to keep up with the changing world, modernisation, and all this, and trying to, kind of adapt to this or not adapt to this. So it's very, very fascinating, a lot of themes, but I still think this film is quite drawn out, and indulgent, and I don't think, really it necessarily had to be, 200 minutes, really, for me. There was quite a lot, especially of the first hour, that was very drawn out, and as I say, it was quite indulgent in places, and just wasn't really, to the point enough, I think, with the setup in places, and some things was rushed, but a lot of things were drawn out, and just too over long for me, personally, but overall, in a nutshell, I did enjoy this film. I think it had, great aspects. The performances were very, very good for the most part, and I think, James Dean, once again, very good in this film, and it was a fascinating film, but really, to summarise my experience, it started out, I wasn't really that into it. It took a while for me to get fully invested in this film, and it's a film that dramatically gets better and better with each kind of passing hour, and by the end of it, that final hour, I was very invested in this film. I think that was the best part of this, and I thought there was quite a lot of very affecting moments, and the way it came together, the final sequences, I really, was quite moved by, actually. So it starts off, it's a rocky start, I would say. A lot of this could have been, just for my liking, trimmed, and as well, more James Dean for me should have been, in this first sort of half of the film. But I think overall, there's many things to praise in this film, and it was an experience that I won't forget, and I definitely do prefer this to East of Eden as well. I think it has a lot more going for it. Overall, and I did feel more for this. That film was obviously way shorter, and I guess more to the point. But this one, even though it's kind of this drawn out epic, and it's not one of the, for me personally, one of the great kind of epics of cinema, I do think it's got a lot going for it, and I did appreciate this, and the experience by the end. I did feel it was that cool epic feel where you've gone through this quite a long period of time, spanning different years, and I do seek these out, different epics for that, alone, that experience, because I do love that theatrical experience, and to sit down for a long time and watch this film and follow different characters, over a certain period of time. So I did like that kind of aspect, and I did have somewhat of that feeling, in the end. So yeah, I did think this film, when we start out, we have, of course, Leslie, played by Elizabeth Taylor. She kind of this socialite, and she meets Rock Hudson, Bick, and I think it was quite a little bit rushed and a bit sudden how they kind of fell in love, and kind of got married. But all that aside, when we got to the main bulk of the first act, in Texas on the ranch, I just found it to be a bit unenjoyable. I think it was very much Leslie going through this, being not treated well at all, and Rock Hudson, I think he gave a very good performance in this, and I think it's just a shame, the character's a bit one-sided at first. I know that's the intention, to kind of, but you can only really judge the character when you've seen the entire film, because he does go for this change, of course, and it is very well done, in the end, actually, and I do commend the film for that, and the way it ends with his arc. But I think at first it was just a bit too one-sided for me to be, fully enjoyable. I think, and just the way he treated Leslie, it was really a bit of a slog to go through. I was getting the point, and then it was a bit repetitive in that, and she just really isn't treated well at all. And Elizabeth Taylor gives a very good performance here, and she does. The character does try to stand up to a lot of the characters, but it's just a bit too much of a grind for me, and it does obviously in the end become a bit more clear what's going on here and what the film is trying to do, obviously. But still it was a bit too long of a kind of a struggle, and in the one-sided way, and a lot of the characters as well just aren't treated well at all by Bick and surrounding family members, and his kind of circle of friends and all this, and it was just really frustrating. But after the first hour, things started to really pick up. It's a shame because what I will say about this film is James Dean, his character of Jet, he starts off very, very interesting, and he's the one that's kind of farm hand. He helps out the family. He's a bit more grounded than these other characters who are not nice at all. They're very bitter, and just don't treat people well at all. They're underneath them, in that sense, and they aren't to their stature. And I think it was Jet who as well was the only other character who other than Leslie had a bit more of a grounded feel, and the way in which James Dean is introduced was great. I loved the framing, his cowboy hat there, and just the way he acted in this kind of first few scenes, the way he was introduced. I think his acting here was really, really good, and just more of a human character who kind of was kind of drawing attention to the flaws of the family and stuff, and how they're treating people. I think, unfortunately, I would have liked to have seen a lot more of Jet when he was in this state, because then he does, he's the main character who kind of goes from rags to riches, and he kind of pursues this wealth, this power, and one of those classic stories where he does lose himself and, essentially his soul along the way, and in the end, his arc was so unsatisfying, and it was very one-sided, actually, even though the rest of the film and the characters, picked up, and it was more investing and more complex and layered, and something I enjoyed more. I think Jet, the way his arc ended, just a complete, a drunk who is just, completely isolated and all this. I just think the film could have done more to add complexity to this, and I just personally for me I didn't really like the way at all his arc ended up, and just everyone kind of going away, and no one really around him at all, and it was just a bit too one-sided for me. But James Dean gave a very good performance, but just the character in that final act in particular was too one-note for me, and I just wasn't really enjoying that. It was just a bit sickening, really, to see this. Again, commend the performances, but the writing here just a bit too one-sided, and more could have been done earlier on as well to focus on this character. When he was a bit more likable, and I was really more interested in this character. He was more complex, and then he became a bit more of a caricature, someone who has lost the way, and that was what I'm trying to say there, because it starts out, the way this character's done is very complex, layered, was very invested in this, but then it becomes just a caricature and, one note kind of throwaway character really in the end. But yeah, I think the rest of the characters, we have Leslie and Bick as well, the way they transform in this film, I will say, the relationship and the ups and downs, and seeing gradually, their family form, and the kids, of course, being born, and all this. And, in the end, Dennis Hopper playing the son, and I think just the way in which all the characters are gradually, coming about, and how we have them, Leslie and Bick being parents in the end, their kids becoming adults. I thought this was quite moving, and, I did really like as well just the way in which it brought certain themes together here, the discrimination theme, of course, and tolerance, the way in which Dennis Hopper, and his wife, treated, and kind of just, I think, Bick as well, standing up for, his wife and the grandson as well. I think that was very human, the way it was done, and just that final, really the film ends on that, the kind of diner sequence, which for me is one of the best sequences in the film, and I didn't expect Bick to really have this arc in the film, and I think it was a very unexpected experience. Watching it again would be quite different. I thought perhaps again, I didn't know anything about this film before seeing it, so I thought perhaps Bick would be someone who Leslie would separate from, and they would he would become more self-destructive, and perhaps I just thought James Dean's character would actually get perhaps with Leslie, based on the first sort of act, but it's a very different film, from that, and Bick does, have this turnaround. So the theme of redemption is very much explored in this film, and I think the way in which it ties different themes as well, discrimination and all this together in that final act, and family and legacy, just the diner sequence and the scene after that, was very moving, and ending in a very nice way as well. And so it does have a lot of heart, this film, and I think it just struggles at times to get to the point. The setup is very muddled at times, and there's a lot of characters to kind of balance out, and I just didn't really think there was a lot of scenes, at first, with the barbecue and all this, where just a lot of the characters were very, very unlikable in a one-sided way, and it was not that pleasant, not that enjoyable. I thought this was very, very average at first, but then it became a film that got better and better, and seeing the different characters and how they progressed and how they changed, and how the world around them changed, modernisation, and all this, and poverty and wealth being explored in this film. I just thought this was very well done at times, especially in the final act. So overall, it became this good, solid film that has a lot of problems. For me, very at first at least indulgent, and just too long, overlong, drawn out scenes that didn't really need to be that long, and I think it could have been a lot more layered at first. It was going through different scenes. The prologue was kind of rushed, although it was nice. I like seeing Rod Taylor in this. Very young in this, and he didn't really get too much dialogue in this, which was a shame. But it was cool to see him, and just it was some nice moments at first. But when they get to the ranch for an hour or so, just under that, it was particularly unenjoyable at times, and I just think it did get a lot better. And as a Western drama, kind of exploring this lifestyle, and this family over 25 years, I do commend the film. It's a very ambitious film. It's not always executed perfectly for me, and there's a lot of issues I have with this film. And just some moments that are a bit too silly as well, in just the way they're done, and tonal moments, particularly at first, where I think the film struggles a bit. But for the most part, the direction by George Stevens, is good. I think when the film slowed down and really centered, it became much more focused, on these characters. Just very, personal in the end. I think just I was more invested, when Dennis Hopper was in the film, and we saw, how the parents, kind of interacting with them, and also just allowing them in the end, or kind of, especially Bick, he's kind of struggling to kind of allow, for example, Dennis Hopper, kind of him to kind of go off and do what he wants. He wanted him to kind of stay in the family business and all this, and become a cattleman and all this, and Dennis Hopper wanted to become a doctor, and in the end it's about letting go your children, and just allowing people to do it their own way, and not necessarily kind of controlling people as well. So that was an interesting theme, and again, very human in the way that was done, and that was when I was really at the most invested in this film, and that's when the film was at its best, and the way it kind of came together was it definitely made up for that first kind of very flawed and quite unenjoyable first act for me of the film. I just think the presentation of this film is very good. The visuals particularly are very nice, and just as well I think the score by Dmitry Tiomkin is really, really good to this film. I love the score, and just the use of music, use of songs throughout the film, recurring songs that played, and I think it's an epic film. It becomes after a while personal more, but I think there's a lot to praise and a lot of things this film is trying to do, and I do commend it for that. And I think it is an ambitious film, and just I think the execution throughout, its 3 hour 20-minute runtime is not always to a certain standard, and there was just too much at first, in the first hour or so that I didn't really like, and to be honest, I thought that was more of a very, very average, film there, and it did then start to pick up. So overall, I think it's a good, solid film. This one, one that I did want to love, but and I did love aspects of this, and I did, enjoy it. This film overall, for sure. It got quite moving, in the end, and it's something to really appreciate and think about as well. A lot of themes, in this. There's just so much packed into this that I don't think really, in the way it's done, it wasn't handled to the best, of ways, and it was, as I say, was drawn out a little bit rushed in places. Not focusing on James Dean at first as much was, I think, one of the flaws as well. When he was more compelling, I could have felt a bit more perhaps as well. But just I think the way in which his character went, it's too one-sided for me. Whereas we've got Bick, played by Rock Hudson, and of course Elizabeth Taylor's Leslie, where I think that's a lot more complex, and I did enjoy the way those characters' arcs ended. So it wasn't all stuff I loved. Quite a lot of things throughout the film that I wasn't big on, but it was a film that I think got better and better with each passing hour. So overall, my rating for this film, taking everything into account, the high points, the low points, and just the consistency of this film and how I was invested throughout, I think my rating is a 72%. So yes, a fair score for me. That's a high score. It's not a film that for me is personally great, but it had great aspects, elements, moments, and I think particularly the final act was very, very strong. So yeah, I think the 72 represents my overall, kind of consistently, enjoyment and investment of this film, and I do think this is a strong film, and I think it's got a lot, kind of going for it, and this being the final James Dean, film that was released, his final performance, of course, that was released. I think this film, it's very interesting, very fascinating, and I thought James Dean was very good in this one. I think just this character, really, I didn't appreciate really the way it ended. The arc, the way it kind of progressed. It was just too one-sided for me, and there wasn't really much enjoyment in that at all. In that final act, watching his character just kind of stumbling through, drunk and fighting. There's obviously explosive final act in places that I like, that aspect of it, but with James Dean, his character of Jet, it's just a bit too one-sided for me. It's tragic, but it's not one that I really enjoyed. Seeing this kind of play out the poetic nature of it. It was just very unpleasant, and it's just one that wasn't. I just didn't really, as I say, like the arc. But the other arcs of the film, I think culminated in a very commendable way, and again, a lot of themes that are brought together really well in a human way, and I think the diner scene, certainly sums up the film very well, and I think it's really nice as well, way in which the film ends, the final shots there. So I think a fascinating film, a complex experience. At first I wasn't really enjoying this film too much, but I liked elements of this very much. So James Dean in particular, but I think the way in which progressed, it became a film that I did really like, and particularly in the final act. That's my thoughts on this film, on Giant. What do you think of this film? How would you compare this to the other films of James Dean? My personal favourite is Rebel Without a Cause, but this one was really interesting as well, and I thought James Dean was great in this, and it's very, very tragic, of course, that he did pass before this as well was even released. So it's just very tragic, the production and everything around this, and obviously James Dean, but he was a legendary actor, and it's once again a hats off to James Dean, a tribute, because he was an absolute legend, and it is so tragic, and this is the final film that he was he appeared in. So it is a film to cherish and to experience as well for that. And just as a western, as a family drama, seeing how characters are changing and how the world around them is changing is a very interesting film, for sure. And I like seeing epics like this. Seeing a family or group of characters over a longer period of time. So yes, it was definitely a film that I enjoyed, and it was an experience for sure. So it'd be great to hear your thoughts. And as always, I will leave a link in the description, to a playlist of all my Western content, on the channel so far, and there'll be many more to come. But for now, I'll have that playlist there, and you can check out my other Western reviews, and we can discuss all things Western, of course. Absolutely love watching, Westerns, and this was a very unique one as well. So yes, what can I say? Look forward to discussing this film in the comments. So yes, as always, take care, and thanks for watching.